So, unfortunately, I did have some audio issues on my end. The audio for the dev, Mikey, does come through fine. I did go back and re record some of the questions. I did have to cut out some of our banter, which is unfortunate. But I do still think through the answers. You see that Mikey is just a really likable person. Like, you just want to support him. And one of the things you'll see with his game, The Adventures of Badgersaw, is that it's literally like he put a piece of himself, like cut a piece of himself from his body and put it out there for you to play. Like, cut a piece from him and put it into digital format. The humor, the creativity, the art, the music, all of it. It's just a really incredible thing. And I think that it's something that we should all support. I'm going to include links to all of his stuff. I don't think he has social media, but the game, The Adventures of Badgersaw, Chapter 1 is on Steam. Also, he did release a free game on itch that I'll include too. And if he has any social media, I'll include it because, again, like, he's a dev I promise you're going to want to follow and see what they do.
Hi, this is Emily with Pixel Breakdown, and today we have Mikey in. Do you want to give a quick introduction of yourself and then maybe talk about what your game is?
Yeah, so I'm a British citizen. I'm living in Japan at the moment, and I've made a horror comedy RPG, just about three guys who get lost in a cave, and they meet a bunch of crazy creatures and stuff, and it's just a bit of a wild adventure. And it came out this month on the 10th of March.
Yeah, it's exciting. Also, don't be confused. The name shows Vincent, but apparently that's like a European or British thing to do.
Yeah, it's the name of the church that I went to when I was a kid. And just like when Google was like, write your name, I just wrote Vincent. But yeah.
Okay. So what was the inspiration for your game, The Adventures of Badgersaw? And
Yeah.
did you start with the world, the characters, or the mechanics?
Yeah, so basically the way that it started was this was like 13 years ago now, so I think I was at 17 maybe, and I just used to play lots of games with my mates, like online games, like co-op games. And when we made characters, we'd always like move the sliders to like the furthest, like make their skin like blue or something like that. And we just put the crazy hairstyles on and stuff and give them crazy names and just play. And I was joking once. I was like, one day I'll make a game with our characters. And it was just a bit of banter. And then I started teaching myself to code and drawing. I always drew, right? So I was like drawing pictures of the characters and stuff and showing my friends. And then that's where the idea came from, the most basic idea. And then when I started actually making a game, it felt kind of like empty. Like I had these characters and talking and they're in like a cave and it's just kind of like, just felt a bit pointless. So I took a step back and I started thinking, okay, like how can I make this interesting? And that's where the world came from. Like who are they? What do they do outside the dungeon? I remembered my English like literature classes from school, and they were like, one of my teachers said like an author will know everything about the characters even if it's not in the story. So I started thinking about that, and then that kind of turned into world building, and it just kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah, when I make
story, the characters, and the art are all just incredibly unique.
But I noticed with your game, like it is like a mix of the dungeon crawler RPG, but it looks like there is a lot of story behind it too, and like the witty banner is like a big part of it. So yeah, that's very interesting. I think I read on your
Steam page, it was saying things like schizotech, nightmarish creatures, and ancient secrets. What went into crafting such a bizarre yet intriguing world?
It's a good question. Basically, the first thing was this game was, I was making it because I found it funny, I guess. And so the first thing was, if I found something funny, like if I was walking around and I had a funny idea, I would put it in the game. That was the first rule. and, and
That's a
then
good
I would,
rule.
yeah. And then I would build the story around the crazy, like things didn't fit together, right? Oh, this it would be so funny if this happened, but it doesn't fit, right? So I had to build the story around these kind of things not fitting together. And there's that kind of like personal things, like I thought it would be cool if they found like a computer, so I put a computer in there, and then I was like, why is there a computer in a fantasy setting? And then it started spiraling kind of into this place, this kind of bizarre setting. And I just tied that in with the kind of backstory of the characters that I'd thought of. And it turned out really that I kind of thought it would be cool if there was like, you know, the world was like with a fantasy world, our world is explored, right? But with like a fantasy world, it could be like the people who are enjoying it, so like us, can see the entire world, but the people in the world don't need to know what's, you know, beyond wherever they live, right? So I thought it would be cool if there was some sort of contrast of like discovering something that you didn't even believe existed or you couldn't even comprehend. And that's kind of where that kind of schizo tech kind of came from.
Oh, that's definitely.
Yeah.
I wonder if is it like slightly symbolic that they're in a cave and you know what I'm
You know
talking
what's
about? Like the
yeah, you know what's funny is that like the cave diving memes like have kind of like exploded in the last like month, and I designed the game 13 years ago, and it kind of coincided with this like people getting stuck in caves kind of thing that's on YouTube is kind
Oh,
of
that's so
exploding at
fun.
the moment. Yeah, I know. I was like, am I lucky? Is this luck? Like, it's kind of like, I don't know how to feel about this. Like, and yeah, like. What you said about symbolism, I did actually think of that like when I say midway, I mean midway through like thinking of the idea like many years ago and making it. I did kind of think like, oh, you know, caves and like the belly of the beast and stuff like that, and kind of exploring the unknown was a cool kind of theme, but it kind of naturally evolved, you know.
It sounds like this is kind of like a peek into your head almost.
Yeah,
Like it feels
you
very
know,
personal.
like that started. I myself, when I was writing it, I was like this is getting personal. Like there's a couple examples, because there's 24 game overs, which I think we're going to talk about. But there's a lot of game over scenes, and I kind of like it's kind of tough to write 24 game overs. I thought it would be fun, but it's not. Yeah, like having your characters die in interesting ways is actually like kind of emotionally taxing. And the main character, I had him die in water twice, and I'm a little bit scared of water. Like I swim a lot,
Yeah.
but I almost drowned once. So I have a little bit of a kind of water's scary. Don't push yourself too far kind of thing. And then when I was proofreading his two deaths, I was like, this sounds like me. Actually, this doesn't sound like my character. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Badgersaw, Mr. L, and Tantalum. Is that how you say it? Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
those are the three characters. They all have very like distinct
Personalities and quirky traits. How did you develop their dynamics? Since the game does feature a lot of banter and stuff, you kind of have to build up these whole personalities, right?
Yeah, like they're basically based on me and my friends. When it like at the basic level, I just thought about my friends while I was writing them. Mr. L changed the most because he's like an old man, and my friend is not an old man. And I thought having like a grumpy guy would add to the dynamic a little bit, so I kind of made him more grumpy. But my friend is not really a grumpy guy; he's the opposite. And the Tantalum is pretty much like my friend as a fantasy character, which he loves it, which is great.
Yeah.
He helped playtest it, yeah. And Badgersaw's kind of based on me if I was a little bit more unhinged, like if I was a bit more like hot-headed and didn't think things through, then maybe I would be like him. That's kind of the gist of them.
It's it sounds very charming knowing that they're such like personal, you know, there's such like a personal backstory to them.
Yeah.
Each character has their own unique resource system instead of one standard Can you explain the thought process behind that? And did you have any issues when designing?
Yeah. So to begin with, having like the MP be different is actually one of the first ideas I had, because basically, like, the guy that Tantalum's based on he's a really clever guy, but he needs a little bit of a push. Like, just, at the time, that was kind of the vibe. And so I was like, oh, your character's going to have like motivation points, not magic points.
Aww.
Like, as a joke I was saying this year. And so then Badgersaw's going to slap you and your motivation's going to go up. That was like part of the banter.
That was my next question, was about that. But
yeah, well,
no, I'm glad we're talking
yeah,
about it.
that's fine. Yeah. And designing it was Badgersaw's points, I may as well go into it, is like malice. And so like he gets more attack when his MP's high, and his attack goes lower when it's low. So he kind of gets caught in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of gets swung around by his emotions, right? So when he's on a winning streak, he's winning. When he's on a losing streak, he's losing. And that was like the idea. Then balancing it became kind of hard at the beginning. The first thing that happened was when I scaled, Badgersaw's slap does damage, right? It does damage to your teammate. When I scaled his attack with his malice, with his MP, when it was really high, he would like kill his teammates with a slap. It was really funny. It was really funny.
That's awesome.
So I had to like, yeah. I get so many game overs and I'd be like, what's going on? Why is it? And then I look at the numbers properly and realize that half the HP was going down from the slap. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And in the end, the entire system is kind of, MP is like a fundamental stat, right? So the entire battle system is now based around MP management. And actually the finished product is actually more about MP than HP. Like, I find when I was watching playtesters, I found people who beat the game easily, they quickly realized that if they manage their MP, the game's not that hard. And people who got frustrated, they'd lose all their MP, they wouldn't be able to kill anything. And then they'd go back and they'd save, and then they'd try again, and they'd, repeat it once or twice till they figured it out, But I like that.
But yeah, the slap mechanic to do MP restoration. So how did that come to be? Just basically like you have some times with your friends, like slap them and be like, get focused on stuff.
It's an exaggeration of what happens in real life, right? Like, in real life, you pat someone on the back, but this is like farcical, slapstick comedy. So it's like a slap instead. Yeah.
That's.
We were younger, It's right now I wouldn't do that, but.
There's no easy way to restore HP, which forces the players to think long term. How did you decide on this challenge-focused design?
Yes, generally I like challenging games, personally. And so when I was designing this one, I kind of had that kind of background. Like, I'm making a game that I like, right? And what I thought was, like, horror games tend to have like a reverse difficulty curve. Like, they start off oppressive, they start really, really hard, and then they get easier as you go on. And I kind of wanted the game to start kind of easy, suddenly get really hard, and then get easier as you got better on. Because I wanted the game to kind of feel like, ha, we're on an adventure, we're having a good time. Bam, nightmares. Bam, this is really bad. This is worse than we expected. And then as you kind of, as a player, conquer the dungeon, it gets easier. So it's like a horror game, but it has this little beginning where it's actually easy. And what happened with the HP was, when people were playtesting it, when they saw that there were limited saves, at first they didn't know what to expect. So they just kind of played the game. And then when they got low HP, they went and they saved, because the saves and the HP are together, by the way. Like, when you save, you restore your HP, and there's limited saves and there's limited HP restores. It's the same thing, right? So people would see that, they'd be like, oh, okay. They'd go, they'd play, they'd have a good time, they'd read the dialogue, then they'd go and they'd save. Now they have one less save. And then they'd fight a boss, and then they'd be like, oh my God, I can't beat this. And then they'd go and save. And then their saves are now running out, and they'd start to like panic a little bit. Like, can I even do this? But, I designed it like it's there's enough to beat the game, but you don't know that when you play it for the first time, right?
Right.
So because you don't know that, it starts making you panic. Like, I might be stuck here. That's how I want you to feel, because that's what the characters are doing, right?
Yeah.
They're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like that was, it was kind of a like cheeky little design choice to make the player feel a little bit oppressed.
That's a good word for it.
Cheeky.
Definitely. But it's like an interesting mechanic or way to handle things in the game that I think does like make the player sweat a little. Just like,
What if you were in an actual K?
um,
The game embraces death as part of the experience, even rewarding players with unique death scenes. How did that idea come about?
That was another one of the very first ideas, which is I'll get onto this as there's like a story, but that was one of the first ideas. Was that when I started making it, I thought that it would be cool if the game over scene was kind of depressing. Like the one of them actually dies, and then the two of them are surviving. Like, and then it's kind of depressing, and then it goes back to the main menu. I thought that was cool, and so I wrote like game over scenes. Like one of them dies, the other two react, and then as the game started getting bigger, I realized that they can't die in the same way every time, because it doesn't make sense. This is classic scope creep. Like now that I say it out loud, like like they could just die in the same way, but I just felt like when I was reading it, I was like, it doesn't seem like a natural way to die. So like 3 game over scenes became 24 game over scenes, just like that.
I see that being scope creep, yes, but also that's like one of those nice touches that I feel like indie games, you can tell when people are really enjoying the development process, like they do add stuff like that.
Yeah, so that happened, and I thought that game over is kind of like a good opportunity to show the relationships, because one thing with games, like compared to novels, is that in a novel it's just like one path, like you can only read forward, right? But in a game you can die, or you can make a slightly different choice or something like that. And so it's kind of a little insight to like how would the characters react if everything went like just really bad, if everything just completely collapsed around them. And there's 24 divided by 3, that's like 8. There's like 8 different scenarios where everything can completely collapse around them, and the party breaks down, and seeing how they each deal with that was kind of cool, like kind of interesting. And so that was kind of what kind of got me through writing 24 of them, I guess you could say.
It's harder watching bad things happen to characters whenever you get so invested emotionally, and the way you developed the characters, I see them as having a lot of personality, and it's easy to get attached to that. I think I also read that the soundtrack is original. Did you compose that yourself, or did you find someone to do that?
I did, yeah. I everything in the game I did. So it's like
you're full solo.
Yeah, full solo. It's literally a solo project. I didn't make the engine, but there's like people don't do that nowadays. But
yeah.
So yeah. I've been playing guitar since I was like 15. Right. I've got like in my family, almost everyone plays an instrument. So we kind of have that background. So just I knew how to write music. So I did it myself.
Oh, wow. So it's like legit music.
Yeah. Legit music. Legit music.
Well, because I for my first game, I also did the programming art and like music and stuff. But like my music was, I just threw some like looping sounds together. I don't have any history in like music or anything like that. And that gets the job done, but it's interesting. Yeah, I'm interested.
I think I've got a bit of ego, to be honest. Like I just wanted to do everything myself. But
you need an ego to do that, though. You really do, and you did it well. I'm gonna include snapshots of the art.
It's all hand drawn, which really adds to the personality and character of the game.
Yeah, I'm
So
glad
yeah,
you say that.
yeah, I think you did really good, like especially as a artist,
Thank
even
you.
not as a solo. It looks um, so. Yeah, that leads to my next question. So it's completely hand illustrated. What was the biggest challenge bringing the world to life fully? You said you have history doing music. You learned programming for this, but how was it with art?
Art is actually like more of a fundamental skill for me. Like I've been drawing since I was like a little baby, basically. Like my
Oh,
mum was also an artist, and so just the house is full of art equipment. It's like,
oh,
paints and pencils and like everything. At the moment, she does stained glass for like churches and stuff like that. So I was just always exposed to that. Um, and what was the challenge bringing it to life? Yeah, the actually making art for a game is kind of hard because like art is an asset, and so you have to, like, if you make the art first, and you probably know this, then you end up not using a lot of art, right? Because the game changes, right? You design too many enemies, you throw like 5 of them away or 10 of them away and stuff. And when I first imagined it, I really wanted to draw the cave, like the whole cave. And I wanted it to be first person. So I wanted it to be like a kind of classic dungeon crawler in a 3D room, but I wanted the rooms to be like tiles, but kind of expansive looking. And so you press forward and you move forward and you're in the cave. And when I calculated the amount of art that I'd have to do to that, it was like astronomical. It was huge. I was like, I can't draw that. I can't draw this much. This is crazy. Which is where the map, like where you see him holding the map, that's where that came from. That was like a solution. Yeah. Yeah. And then it was mostly about like I was actually by the like beginning of the project, I was thinking, where can I cut art? What do I not have to draw? I could cut this.
yeah.
Cut that.
Where can I reuse stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it kind of shrunk really small and then grew again because I cut it too much. I did have one of the very first playtesters was like, I want you to draw more, dude. Like the descriptions of the rooms are cool, but I want to see them. I was like, dude, I can't do that. There's no time to do that, man. But
I mean, it's good that you were able to put limits on like it's like I feasibly can get this done in like a decent amount of time. Let me put some like walls up and say don't go past, like
yeah.
'cause it's easy to get stuck in
Yeah. Drawing was the most stressful part of the project. And people, like a lot of my friends are also artists, because I guess that when you're in that, you meet people who also draw and stuff like this. And they're telling me, oh, you get to draw to make money. That's great. And I was like, it's not great, dude. Do you want to draw for me?
yeah, it's fun for a while.
Yeah. It's the concentration. Like you concentrate for like 3 to 6 hours, I guess. And it really tires you out. Like more for me personally, more than programming does, more than art music does. It tires me out, and it the workload astronomical. So when you cross something off your list, it feels like you did nothing.
Yeah.
You
spend all day on like one little sprite sheet animation.
And then you look at it the next day and you see a mistake and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're doing the animation stuff, it's like, oh no, this one thing is like off little. I have to go back and do the whole.
Yeah. It's yeah.
For you, because
I know with me, I actually liked being able to rotate between programming and art, depending on which I was just more in the mood to do that day. Like sometimes I would go weeks doing just the art, and then other times it was like I really just want to do programming. I don't know, is that how it was with you?
I agree with you. I kind of approached it that way. I did all the programming first because my kind of philosophy is you make the game first and then you add the assets.
Yeah, that's smart. That's
smart. But like of course, like programming in a game like this also includes like kind of scripting. That's what they call it in Japanese. I'm not sure what they call it in English, but that's like putting the text into the game. It's not really programming, it's putting the story into the game, right? And that's kind of a kind of brainless job to an extent. Like there's some things you need to think about, but it's not like really heavy. And so like I would kind of leave bits of scripting to do later. And I programmed all of the hard code, and then I draw, and like you said, I get completely tired, and then I'd write some music or I'd do some scripting, and I'd kind of break it up like that.
Yeah, that makes I guess, okay.
If you had to say like one or two things, what would you say was the hardest part of developing this game as a solo dev?
The hardest part was managing family life and dev life. Yeah, that was really hard. So I was working a job, like it was a full-time job, but I managed to cut my hours by like 60 to 80% to work on the game. And then I was working on the game, and then I had a son, like a newborn son, like pretty much exactly when development started.
Little baby Badgersaw.
Yeah, like their birthday is like the same, basically, like production. Yeah, and obviously we kind of live away from our parents, right? So we don't have like grandparents, and we don't have aunties, uncles, and stuff like. So we didn't really have a support circle. So it was like go to work, and the work I do is kind of grueling. I'm a bartender at a high-end restaurant, but there's like a early shift as well. So I would sometimes be at work for 11 hours. And I'd come back. Yeah. I'd come back and I would go to sleep, and my son's crying because he's a little baby, right? Yeah. And then I'd wake up the next day. Yeah, I'd wake up the next day, and I'd work, and then I'd take care of the baby, because just leaving it all to my wife is like just not going to happen, because it's just too much work, right?
Having a little baby. You for that. Yeah. It sounds obvious, but it's not. Apparently,
it's a huge amount of work. Yeah. Not to call a baby work, but you have to be attentive. You got to be on.
Yeah.
You can't kind of be like, oh man, I'm done today. Like, so the stress, the first couple months were okay, but the middle of the project was just complete chaos, and the very end of the project was complete chaos. Just no time, no energy, maximum stress. If you don't have, yeah, thank you. I feel, I wouldn't do it again.
Not in those circumstances, right?
Under those circumstances, yeah. I'd drop my job, or I would go back in time and start earlier. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like with a kind of industry like this, it's really about accumulation. Once you've got some like a game is like a portfolio piece. It's like a portfolio piece. So once you've got a couple of games, then you're kind of doing okay, and you have a bit more freedom, right? But your first commercial game is kind of hard to get out there. 0 to 1 is really hard. So I don't know if anybody was wondering, just push through the first game. That's important.
Yeah. That's great advice. 100%. Yeah. Also, I commend you because a lot of times it's easy to set out to make a game. I even have a game where I set out to make it, still haven't opened it in a while, right? So the fact that you had that drive, just keep doing it and still sort of balance everything else, right? And it has a lot of your personality. It's a well put together game. It is really cheeky, and it's nice to see that it doesn't seem rushed. It seems like it has a lot of heart.
Oh, thank you.
But also, I want to say your wife is also supportive of the game, right? Because she made that acrylic.
Oh yeah, of course.
I want to see.
Yeah, I do have it. Yeah.
For Christmas, right?
Yes, for Christmas. Yeah.
That's so sweet.
She got this.
I'll put a picture too.
Yeah.
That's just so awesome.
That she is that supportive.
Yeah, I was so shocked when she brought this out, because I told her it was one of my dreams to have a figure, kind of an anime figure of a character I made. It's not an anime figure, but when I saw this, I just my heart melted. I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's so sweet. I could see your characters making good Funko Pop. Or something.
Yeah, right. Maybe I should call them
definitely.
up.
Yes. Also, I think we discussed this a little, but they also are definitely really interesting, where they would make really good cosplays. I would love to see people dressed up like those. They just seem so funny. I don't know.
I would be over the moon, man. I'd be so happy to see that kind of community engagement. It's moving. Yeah.
I hope eventually that does. I could, yeah.
Yeah, just
Um,
keep at it.
yeah, definitely.
So, as a solo dev, how did you handle playtesting? It sounds like you gathered a lot of info from it, which is really amazing as a solo dev because a lot of teams don't even do that. How did you go about it?
It was mostly friends and friends of friends who did it for me. Like, kind of, we touched on this just a little bit earlier that like pushing through the game, like
Yeah.
the development. One of the things which really helped with this game was that because it started as a kind of joke with friends, because it started as a kind of like that my friends were into it, right? For like, I'm making a game. If I say to you, I'm making a game, people kind of might have this reaction like, oh, that's cool, man. You know what I mean? But if it's like I'm making a game that I told you I would make as a joke 13 years ago, I'm actually making it now. Then,
Yeah.
yeah. That just that line gets people like, oh my god, you're making it. Let me see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then they start talking and stuff, and people get super excited. And because I had that was a massive motivator for me to keep going when it was tough. And of course, these people, they wanted to play it because they're emotionally invested into it. And then they tell their friends about it, and their friends are like, I'll test it for you. And so I didn't have a huge amount of testers, right? But I had enough to get enough data to kind of, when as a designer, you're on the edge, you're like, I think this is bad, but I don't know because I've played my own game 20 times and I'm used to it. But it might be bad, but I don't know anymore. And so then you ask someone like what their opinion was, and they mention that thing, and you're like, "It is bad, isn't it? It's bad."
Yeah. Or like, I knew that doesn't work, does it? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really helped, really helped having people who are into it like that.
No, definitely. I'm glad that your friends were supportive of it. Another question that I think people will be curious to know is like, what game engine did you develop in? And is there a particular reason you use that one?
I made it in like Rempi or Rempi. I don't know what people say, which is like a visual novel engine. Yeah. And the reason why I made it in that is because I have no idea how to code. And so I like literally like people like, oh, you're a programmer, and I'm like, haha, yeah. And like
I mean, I've never heard of RenPy until today, but you're actually the second dev that I interviewed today that said they used RenPy. And I mean, that counts, I think, as programming, probably.
It's Python. It's Python.
Oh, yeah,
but
then that definitely.
Yeah, it is programming, but it's got a bunch of so RenP is for visual novels. It's like the full thing is Renai Python, and Renai means relationship, and so it's like relationship game, which is a like dating simulator, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Python for dating simulators. That's kind of what it is. Yeah, and I'm using it to make this game. It's kind of funny, but yeah.
It's a great use of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Slay the Princess was made on Empire.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is out there. It's just kind of, unless you're into that kind of scene, like Japanese kind of, gaming, like visual novel gaming, you wouldn't have heard of it. It's kind of like not that industry standard kind of thing. So I use that because when I open Unity, and I've played around in Unity and Godot a little bit, so I'm not like completely don't know, but like I just get overwhelmed immediately. Like so much going on, and I'm kind of an abstract mind. So like when I drag a square and then I attach a script to the square, I'm like, I don't understand, why is this script on the square? I want just a big piece of paper. I want a big piece of paper with code in it. Like, you know what I mean? So like it was, I mean, I need to put more time as a developer into those softwares because I want to skill up eventually. But in terms of like, can I make a game? Well, if I use this engine, I can. And if I use that engine, I can't. Right. So you got to go with what works when you're under kind of pressure, pressure to get something made. And that's also why it's like a turn-based RPG, because my programming skills wouldn't let me make it full 3D, you know what I mean? Like this, it would take too long. So like,
but it fits your style so well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad.
I wouldn't have looked at it and thought like, oh, that's because you couldn't do it in 3D or any other way.
That's great. That's great.
Fits well.
Yeah. I guess like being able to draw, it kind of all comes together. Yeah. But yeah, that's why I used the engine. It was more of a practical consideration.
If it makes you feel better, like I've worked on like large games or like even AAA games in like Unity and Unreal, and I get overwhelmed by them. And like
Yeah,
I've worked even after working in it like professionally for like a couple years, I still am like, whoa, this like,
they're heavy, there's
yeah.
so much. I do kind of feel like I was thinking the other day, the Total War series,
Yes.
video games. Yeah, that like you can change the tax of the cities, right? And I play Total War a lot. I've never changed the tax of the city. Like it's a mechanic I've never touched the whole time I played. And I was thinking Unity is probably like that. There's probably bits there that just people like 80% of users never touch. Like
no, 100%. I would say that's it spot on, because like I still haven't touched a lot of Unity and Unreal, but you can still make
entire games without touching parts of it. Just get those bits and pieces as you are learning. I know you kind of touched on it by saying just make the first game, but if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice prior to starting the project, what would it be?
One piece of advice, that's quite hard. I think that like rather than advice, I'd probably be like, this is a bigger project than you think it is.
Yeah.
Like while I was making Badgersaw, I made another game which is on itch right now, which is free. I made it because I was tired of making Badgersaw, but I still wanted to program. And I learned a lot because I went into Badgersaw without being able to code. And I learned a lot about coding, and kind of, you look back and you're like, this is spaghetti. I thought it was great, but it's spaghetti.
Yeah.
And and I learned how to use, for example, I didn't know what a list was, and I didn't know what a class was. I didn't.
You're starting at the very beginning.
Yeah, literally the very beginning. So at the beginning, no lists. It's like, and when I discovered what a class was, I was like, this is so cool. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm like from the
like
1970s or something.
Yeah.
Right? This is crazy. So I made another game to practice using classes, and I made it in 8 hours. So it's like really small.
I'll link
it's on
it.
itch.io. Yeah. I'll send you a link afterwards. And when I did that, when I made that, I was like, this is a small game. Like, what?
Yeah. An 8 hour small game.
I was like, Badgersaw is not a small game.
Right.
Like, no, I mean, like, so, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change anything. Like, I wouldn't actually, I like what I made, and I think that I put everything I wanted to put into it. Yeah. But I was not prepared for the amount of work, Yeah. So, yeah, it's really hard. Like, I would love to say to myself, take more breaks, but I didn't really have time to take more breaks. You know what I mean? So probably me and my wife, we figured out some time management to keep ourselves like mentally healthy over the course of the time. So like, okay, from this time, my wife's having a break. From this time, I'm having a break. We'd have like hour slots or 2 hour slots, like every now and again. I would take that, I'd put it all on a piece of paper, and I'd give it to myself. At the beginning of the product, this is what worked.
My last real question, and then I have a fun question.
Okay.
So for the real question, what's
one thing that you hope players take away from experiencing your game?
Yeah, that was a hard question. I thought about it a lot, actually. I gave up eventually. Like, I was like, I don't know. And then later, after I gave up, I was on the train, and it like popped into my head was that, so basically I'm from the UK and I moved to Japan. I thought it'd be easier to get into game dev here. So I moved here. And when I moved here, I left all my friends. And it's quite funny to talk about now, because a lot of the friends inspired Badgersaw, which I ended up making here, right? And I have friends in Japan, and I have a social life in Japan, but the rhythm of life in Japan is different. People work longer hours, and there are no like public spaces. You can't go chill in the park or the pub like you do. Like everything is kind of, you make a reservation, even if it's cheap. You make a reservation, or you go in and you get a seat for 2 hours. Everything is very like time constrained. There's no like, I'm just gonna chill kind of time. And I realized that like the simple pleasure of just like not thinking about time that I had in England, I kind of lost it here. And the thing with Badgersaw is, it's at its heart, it's a tale about like, I need to say this carefully because like there's a lot of stories about friendship, which like if you work together, you can overcome anything, right?
With the power of friendship.
Yeah, the power of friendship. But it's not that really, because Badgersaw's not really about that. They're arguing all the time and stuff. It's more about
I love that.
It's not about friendship. Like it's more about the simple joy of doing something with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like enjoying time together with your friends just as they come, even if they're slapping you.
Yeah. Even if everything spirals into chaos, just having your friends in that chaos with you is just like, there's a happiness in that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I thought of that on the train after giving up on the question. And I think that that's kind of the message of the game, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good, and it feels from you describing like what you've put into it, you know, I think that I'm certain that, um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's like a good answer. Okay, for the fun question. Okay, if Badgersaw, Mr. L, and Tantalum, I don't know why that one's so Tantalum, but it's such a fitting name for him when you see him. Were transported to a dating sim game. Who would be? I picked this question just for this one because I was like, these are some interesting characters.
Okay.
Who would do the best at like wooing the?
That's hard. That's hard. It's going to depend on what you're into. Like it's not going to be Mr. L. It's not going to be Mr. L. Like,
Even if you're into that, it's not Mr. L.
Yeah, I imagine Badgersaw is like a little bit. I'm not even like, I don't even know the terminology. Like I imagine that if you're into like guys that are a bit more like, you know, they're kind of far away. I don't know how to explain this. They're kind of far away and they're kind of a bit chill, and they kind of seem to be dealing with everything silently, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of take it in their stride. You'd probably like Tantalum. Yeah. And if you're into someone who's kind of crazy, you'd probably like Badgersaw.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
that makes sense as an answer.
That's all the questions that I had for you. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking about your game. Again, it seems like a piece of you, and you seem like a very naturally creative person. So even though you solo dev'd it, it seems like a lot of skill and heart went into the game. I'm looking forward to people cosplaying it.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I was enjoyed talking about it. Thank you. It's like one thing with solo devs, a lot of it is in you, and it comes out into the game. It doesn't come out like, you know, any other way. You know what I mean? And sometimes talking gives you a deeper understanding of what you've done.